Welcome to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill, time management strategist, author, award-winning speaker, and advocate for all things growth in motherhood. A quick reminder that if you're listening to this episode, you can actually also watch it on YouTube and see the conversation that I'm having with Katja over there in action. As a Joie de Vivre energy healer and a liberator of integrity, Katja Surya Lany supports others to access clear and empower their subconscious for increased joy of life and empowered agency. Katja Surya is the creator of the Inner Child Quiz, which is a magic mirror that allows you to discern the healing that your unique inner child type really needs. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Hey Jill, hey listeners. I am so excited to be here too. And as you were already alluding to, Jill, the thing that we are both so passionate about is that mother energy. And I might start as well defining what mother energy means for me. And I have found great joy recently in speaking to how father energy and mother energy make sense in the work that I do, that reparenting work, working with the inner child. Of course, there is the question when I do reparenting work, how does the energy of the mother, how does the energy of the father support? And what came to me sitting with that question is the father energy is extremely important to begin the work. And it's very fair to say that nowadays it is the rare human being who chooses to commit to doing this inner child work because it is just so intensely uncomfortable. And that's where the father energy is helpful, because the father energy supports us with that fierce courage to begin looking within. And yes, it is pain that we are finding in that internal look. So the Father really helps us to choose to go into the discomfort with fierce courage. And then the Mother energy allows us to stay there through her tender care and tender compassion. And I have found that the true magic really happens when both those energies work synergistically. And this synergy, this 1 + 1 = 3, that is also something that is so dear to my heart. And I can't repeat often enough how magical it is to have this teamwork between the two. And no surprise, in your quiz, Jill, I landed on the team player.
That doesn't surprise me at all. You are so about community. I love that so much.
Yeah, yeah.
I got the nurturer on your quiz, which we will tell the listeners about because it is so special, and the work that you're doing is so needed right now in the world. And I wonder if, for the listeners who might not be familiar, can you take us to the bare bones basic? What is this reparenting work, and how is it that you work with people?
Mm. Well, there is so many people that I am speaking with nowadays who somehow feel stuck. And I like to speak to that stuckness, explaining that we all know that emotions are energy in motion. That is like a formula that most of us have heard. And then we can take it from there and say stuckness, or the sense of being trapped somehow. That is when emotions are not in motion. So in the inner child work that we are doing together, it's all about finding those incomplete emotions and committing to feeling them to completion. And sometimes it's not only emotions that haven't been felt completely, but it can also be complete life passages that have been skipped. So it's also rewarding to look into that and to find out what rite of passage might I have become stuck in, and to go back in time to complete those. So it's really about finding what it is that can be completed. So I don't need to go through the pain of repeating something that feels utterly miserable. And that can be a catchy phrase, complete, so to not repeat.
I like that. And you're right. Life will continue to serve us these lessons until we complete the lesson, until we complete the cycle, the feeling. And
Yeah.
so, how does it work with regards to going back and healing? What kind of modalities, like what does it look like when you work with a client? Because a lot of the listeners are with me in this woo, in this spirituality realm, but a lot are not. And so they might be listening thinking, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that even look like?
Well, how does a typical session with me look like? It starts always with finding a potent intention. And I used to say to my clients that a potent intention is really one that is formulated in a very concise way, and about 5 words or less is really the sweet spot. And oftentimes that's already the first challenge, because people start speaking about the challenge that they find themselves in, and then easily 10 minutes are over. And then the art lies in, okay, how do we crystallize those 10 minutes of talking into that most potent intention? What is it that we really want to call in? And usually it's very easy to find what the client wants to call in by looking at the opposite of what they've been complaining about. For example, when they are going on and on how frustrated they are, we could look into, is what you want to call in greater satisfaction? Anyway, once we have agreed on that most potent intention to work with, I then open the client's energy centers to find out which of their chakras is most charged with that intention. And that's the chakra we are doing our work in. And often enough, like 99.9% is the root chakra. And that's where we are working then to create a new sense of safety, security, and stability, because the people who come to me often feel a sense of insecurity and instability, and that's often related to their challenge of trusting. There are often trust issues that need to be addressed, and through working in the root, that can be remedied. And while we are working in that first energy center, it often, if not always, involves traveling back in time to find out that point of origin when those negative emotions that plague them today originated. And then we are working directly with that younger part of that person, using the person's own higher self to reach out to that little girl and to give her all the comfort she was so yearning for back then, but did not receive. Not because of anybody's fault, but typically because the people in her environment had their own issues that they were suffering from, and thus could not offer that unconditional love that every one of us is so deserving of. And yes, it might have been lacking growing up, but we can give that unconditional love to our younger parts within now. And that's what we're doing. And with the little girl receiving that unconditional love, that undivided attention, and this present listening with the utmost compassion, we can anchor in new, more life-giving beliefs that replace previous beliefs that have been draining you.
Listening to the way that you describe it, it sounds so peaceful. And it almost sounds like magic. And do you know what I mean? It's so incredible that through this energy healing work, we can really address some big things. We can really heal things and from our own past. But is it also true that we can heal things from our ancestral lineage through this process?
Absolutely. This is exactly what I do in the more advanced level of working with people. We then get an understanding how individual trauma, ancestral trauma, and collective trauma are interwoven and ultimately one and the same thing. And I wanted to comment on that word peace that you used, Jill, because the way I define peace is the ability to hold both ends of a spectrum. And that is so crucial to know, to consider, because it happens so easily that we are in a position where we are judging something and therefore not including it. But in integrating all the incomplete things from the past, it is so crucial to include the excluded. And that means I need to embrace myself and I need to embrace life in the allness there is. There's really nothing that stays excluded. Everything gets lovingly included, and that's where the magic lies. And that's another word that you named. Yes, it is really magical work, and the magic happens through this embracing my allness.
And I can understand how valuable it is to have someone facilitate this for you, because exactly because of the discomfort that it is, because
Mhm.
it's not a process that we would necessarily willingly take ourselves through by ourselves. We would stop, we would block, we would come up against all of these things on our own, which is why it's so important to have someone like Katja holding you through this experience, guiding you and facilitating you so that you can do the healing,
Mhm.
right? I
Yeah.
want to talk to you as well about this idea of the mother tree or the hug tree.
Mm.
Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. Oh, the mother tree. That is very much in this context of being a team player that we mentioned earlier in our conversation. When you imagine this forest vegetation, right? There is typically this mother tree that ensures that all the plants in the forest are thriving. And the mother tree knows only when every single organism in the system is thriving, the whole of the forest is thriving. And if we apply that to the mother, we can say that the mother knows that in the family unit or in the community unit, it is also key to ensure that everyone's needs are met, that every single member of the family is feeling heard. And a mother would never disregard that. It is so natural for the mother heart to be in this position of what is best for the communion of everyone involved here. It's having this perspective of when everyone's needs are being heard and listened to, then we all thrive together. And every single one of us has their very unique gifts to contribute. And so once we are all contributing in our uniqueness, then we have this 1 + 1 = 3 effect. But oftentimes, people aren't even listened to in their unique contribution they are able to offer. So I would say one main skill of the mother is that she listens to what is that unique thing that only you can contribute for the benefit of us all.
Yeah. And I'm just realizing as you're describing this mother tree that in the inner child work, we are the mother tree for all of the pieces, for all of the pieces of inner children of our younger versions, that we are able to listen to them and give them space. And that's what this work is about. And so I invite you to share with us about the quiz that you've created and how we can use it as a starting point to really learn about our inner child and the work that can be done. Because I remember first hearing about inner child work and healing and thinking, oh, I don't need to be healed. I'm fine. I'm just a normal person who's not been exposed to anything spiritual yet. And I don't understand this concept. So I think bringing in this piece of understanding will open people's eyes to seeing, oh, there's a piece of this that I didn't know that I need to address. right? So can you share with us about the quiz and sort of how that leads into this work?
Yeah. I want to begin by repeating that word that stood out for me when I was listening to you, and it is the word listen.
Mm.
It is so important that every younger part within really feels listened to. And I was speaking earlier that your now self might have this sense of, oh, I'm stuck somehow, but I don't know what I need to do. And then the first step would be, have you listened to what that younger part within needs? And this is again what the mother provides. The mother provides that very unique type of comfort that the inner child within is yearning for. And depending on which result you are landing on in my quiz, the comfort might differ a little bit from the warrior to the seer, the nurturer, the cheerleader, or the love glue. But ultimately, there is no way around to be in that space of listening and to find out what comfort does my inner child need, and committing to, okay, that's what I'm giving you now. And yeah, I already named the possible inner child types that people can land on in my quiz. I can repeat them again. It's the warrior archetype, the seer archetype, the nurturer archetype, the cheerleader archetype, or the love glue archetype. And just to name one example of them, for example, the warrior archetype is someone who is living very much in their head. So for the warrior type, it is extremely important to learn to make decisions intuitively. And when they free their intuition, they are then able to move forward with decisive action steps.
I love that. I loved the results. They matched me so perfectly when I took the quiz as the nurturer. And I think that it is such a lovely way to introduce this work through a fun quiz. We will of course make sure that the link to the quiz is in the show notes for the listeners, because you're going to want to take the quiz, find out your inner child type, and get the
Yeah.
wisdom that really comes from the follow-up, right? And to be able to work with Katja and to benefit from all of the knowledge that you have, and hard-won knowledge, and I love the work that you're doing, and sharing this with the world is such a beautiful gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I'm wondering if there's anything that is on your heart to share with the audience that we haven't covered yet, or something that you wish everybody would know after leaving this conversation today.
Mm-hmm. One thing that just came back to me is that there is so many people in my circus, and possibly in yours too, who are speaking about the divine feminine rising. Is that something you hear a lot these days?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that desire of having the divine feminine rise within, I like to point out, yeah, this is really something we all want so much. And the divine feminine can only rise when there is no little one still throwing temper tantrums. So even in that context, it is so crucial to commit to this reparenting of the inner child, because that allows that divine feminine energy to flow.
I love that. That's really important information to know. And it really speaks to the fact that as we go on this growth journey, as we embark on a spiritual journey, it layers. Each piece gives us unlocks the next level. And so they are all such important pieces to do, all of this inner work, all of this spiritual work. If you're looking for, I don't know what the word would be, but like fullness is the one that I feel comes to mind.
Yeah. And that weaves back to that word allness that we've used earlier in the conversation, to really embrace the allness of self, to make sure everything is included and nothing is viewed judgmentally and therefore excluded. And when it comes to that, I love to point out how key it is to feel all emotions and to really allow whatever emotion arises to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a default that when so-called negative emotions come up, like fear, sadness, anger, to want to run away from them. But that only leads to that procrastination with the work. We said how important it is to lean in, and it is in the feeling of those emotions that we are healing them. And better to do it now, because the sooner we are feeling them completely, the sooner that misery that we find ourselves in is ending. But even here, it is the rare person who admits, well, actually, I'm not that fine. Oftentimes, we use that so automatically. When somebody asks us how we are, we say very automatic, oh, I'm fine. But it's not really the truth.
Yeah.
If we are being truthful, if we are being vulnerable, we typically have to admit, yeah, everything might not be that rosy after all. And I often say, it's important to become a truth feeler, and then from there to also become a truth speaker. And when I can elaborate on that a little bit more, I would say, I am a truth feeler when I commit to descend from that headspace that most of us tend to be in, to really go down into the body with that curious and open question of what's there, and really listen what the body wants to communicate. And then not excluding anything that bubbles up to the surface, but to let it be no matter what, and to speak truth about, this is what's happening inside for me now. And when we are in this truth feeling and truth speaking, that's where we can do this magical work that we did before.
That's incredible. And I'm
Because once
so
we feel that pain, it opens up to that joy that
mm,
we so desire to feel. And I came to name my energy healing Joie de Vivre energy healing, which in English would be the joy of life, because so many people who came to me said, I don't know what it is, but somehow my joy is gone. It feels like there is a stop button pushed, and I want to turn that on button on so I can feel greater joy again.
that's so cool. And it's the perfect name. The work that you're doing is incredible. Thank you for being here and sharing with us today. I want to encourage everyone to go take your quiz. It's
Mm.
at Katja Surya Lany.com. Is that correct?
Without the middle name, it's
Okay.
just my first name and the last name,
Katja.
katyalani.com.
Com. We'll link it in the show notes, of course. And I would really love for the listeners to find us and send us a message on LinkedIn or on Instagram and let us know what you thought about the conversation today, what landed, what resonated, and reach out to Katja. And until next time, keep on
Yeah.
growing like a mother. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jill. And this is really what lights up my heart, to be in conversation with others about those deep, deep topics.
Mm.